Good morning, good morning, good morning, and welcome to this, our fifth episode of Speaking Out, Exposing Corruption and Incompetence. Pleasant good morning to all our viewers. I notice people are logging on as we speak. Just remember to share the live stream so that more persons can be made aware of what is going on. I see some of the regulars are already on. So as I take this time to greet you, just make sure that you share the live stream. I'm sure that you will find this morning's subject, as you would have found the other subjects, very, very informative and interesting. So get your colleagues, don't be selfish, get others, call them, message them, share the stream, and let's get this program going this morning. Speaking out, exposing corruption and incompetence. I want to thank you for your interest. The interest shown has been tremendous, and the viewership keeps growing. This is very encouraging, and this will encourage me to continue to speak out. So share, and let's get the program going. As I indicated in the notice this morning, or the notice that I sent out yesterday, you will see what the subject is this morning. But last week, you recall the things that I told you, among the things that I told you, was the worrying exponential increase in the COVID infections. And we have since seen that the numbers have continued to rise. Over the last week, the average, and this is inclusive of the number yesterday, 1,086 new cases. The daily infection of COVID in Guyana has risen to over 1,000 persons per day. This is indeed very, very worrying. So I want to again urge all of you folks to follow the COVID guidelines. Make sure that you stay safe. You know what those guidelines are. So please do everything to remain safe. As I indicated in the notification, today I want to address the crisis in the senior management of the Guyana Police Force. That will be the theme for today. However, before I do that, let me say that I have noticed that one person has asked why only now I am speaking out, and another suggests that I should address electoral rigging, etc. I have stated the reason why I have started this live stream. For the benefit of viewers, I will again address that fully on a subsequent program. I've also previously stated that I'm no politician, and any alleged rigging can be addressed by persons who are far more competent than I am. Like I said before, I am staying in my lane, and my lane is about policing. I know about policing, and I will stick to addressing issues related to policing in Guyana. Before I go into today's subject, I would like to briefly address two issues that are currently in the news. And I refer to one, the police powers in relation to tinted motor vehicles, and two, the manslaughter charge against the policeman for the killing of Orrin Boston. What has prompted me to address this, the tinted vehicles? You would have seen a letter from a lawyer a note on social media from a lawyer. And then last evening, the traffic chief, Senior Superintendent Ramesh Ashram, was on a program, this is voice recording, seeking to address the issue. And let me say this, and I don't think time will permit me today to go into any great details about the tint regulation. But there are some issues that arose in the letter from Mr. Crawford and the note from the traffic chief last evening, which compels me to make a few comments. And as I said later, perhaps next week or some other time, I'll try to go into that tint regulation in some great detail. And I'm going to try to break it down in layman's language so that you can understand what obtains. And I do this because when the tint regulation came into being in the late 90s, I was the traffic chief. I was the person piloted the tint regulation with all the papers that had to be written, the justification made, and all of that. Following that, the 103, section 103.1, I think it was enacted. And it says, and let me explain it in layman's term. What it really says is that no person should have any tint or any similar material on the glass of his vehicle so as to prevent a person from the outside of identifying a person who is inside the vehicle. Let me say that again. The regulation says that no person should have fitted onto the glass of his vehicle no item, no tint, or any such material which will prevent a person from the outside of identifying the person on the inside. Now, when that regulation was passed, as was to be expected, there was a lot of issues, a lot of controversy in terms of the identification of the person on the inside. So the question was, it was very subjective, and then people were saying, well, one person might say that I can identify with the same level of tint, and then the next person will come along and say, well, I can't identify. And then that was exactly what occurred. So it was so subjective. And of course, we started to make allegations that people were deliberately, that is, policemen were deliberately saying that I cannot recognize the person inside as a means, as a ploy to shake persons down. That may not have necessarily been so, but because of the nature of the way this thing was drafted, it caused problems from the outset. And the regulation also went on to say that not only tint and such material, but the next section speaks of things like blinds. Some buses used to have curtains or blinds on the window, but the regulation applies to those things as well. So that is what the regulation is. And when that was implemented, as I said, I was the traffic chief, and there was a joke about it, let me tell you that, because Larry Lewis was the commissioner of police, and this regulation was to come into effect from the 1st of April of that particular year. I can't remember the exact year it was. But Larry Lewis, being superstitious as he was, made it clear that he was not going to have any regulation implemented on All Fools Day. So I think it was either the next week or the following day, the regulation was implemented. And if you recall, those of you who are old enough, there was a campaign by the drivers of minibuses and our cars. They had a slogan, we want, we tint. We want, we tint. And we in the traffic used to say, we want the tint off. So we should just add off to the slogan that they had. But that is the way it started. There was nothing about percentage of light penetration or anything like that. Then I was moved from traffic. I went to A Division as a 2IC to A Division. And while I was in A Division, I was reading a magazine given to me by a friend, and I saw an advertisement for tint meters. So then I wrote to the commissioner of police, and I said to him, look, we can avoid all this subjectivity to the regulation by acquiring tint meters so that we can properly measure what type of light penetration and agree to what penetration would be allowed. That was sent to the Commissioner Lewis. And as fate would have it, I then moved from second in command of A Division back to traffic headquarters, and therefore was tasked with the responsibility of putting together this percentage. And we had several checks, several levels of tints on vehicles. We acquired a tint meter through a friend of the police. And we had several levels there, and we started to check those levels. And you would not believe me, but this is true. As I said, when I say things on this program, you can follow up and check, do your research and check. The person who worked with me to arrive at the acceptable level of tint was no other than the current Speaker of the National Assembly, Mr. Mansour Nadir, who was at the time, I think it was the president of the minibus or the public transportation association. He held some position like that. And we worked together, got the several levels of tint, and agreed that the amount of light penetration should be 65%. Now that a document was done, it was sent to the then Minister of Home Affairs, Mr. Gajraj. And as far as I'm aware, that did not go any further because they were to go back to Parliament to have this 65%, some I think negative resolution, whatever was to be done to make this thing a part of the regulation. It was never done. And the next thing that you need to, so therefore, this issue about 65% penetration, light penetration, I am not sure that that is part of the regulation. When last I checked, it is not part of the regulation, but that is what is being used. I don't know what legal effect or what legal authority it has, but that is what is being used, right? So understand that. And then the next issue has to do with the police action. And this is one to address because I said perhaps in the next program I'll go into this whole tint arrangement fully. What caused me to mention this is last night the traffic chief, Senior Superintendent Ramesh Ashram, indicated who can stop vehicles, and he made a few what I believe are a few errors because he said that only a gazetted officer, I think what he meant, and he's not a gazetted officer because the gazetted officers in the police force are officers from cadet on to commissioner. They are gazetted officers. What he meant when he spoke about licensing and certifying officers, in Guyana, in order to be a licensing and certifying officer, policeman to be a licensing and certifying officer, that recommendation is sent to the Ministry of Home Affairs. And once the minister, who is the competent authority, agrees, then those names are published in the official gazette. In other words, it is then said that these persons are licensing and certifying officer in the state of Guyana. And it's correct to say that it's only a licensing and certifying officer can examine a vehicle, any motor vehicle, right? So what he omitted to mention, I mean, he talked about writing statement and going to court. That is not how the process works. If a vehicle is taken into a police station by anyone and who alleges or who claims that there's a defect, whether one light, whether smooth tire, whether the tint is too dark, the licensing and certifying officer is authorized to inspect that vehicle. And once he inspects that vehicle, there's a process to revoke the fitness if the vehicle does not measure up to the standard. But this thing to say that the licensing and certifying officer can take the tint off the vehicle, that is not true. No policeman can demand that you take the tint off the vehicle. What should happen is that the licensing and certifying officer should examine the vehicle, revoke the fitness if the vehicle is not in compliance. And we did that some time ago with even minibuses with the boom boxes, right? The fitness to the vehicle was revoked. And once the fitness is revoked, then the person had to put the vehicle in order, and the vehicle is going to be re-examined at some time, and then the fitness is given. The question, and again, these are issues that came up years ago when I was traffic chief, because the question was asked, when the fitness of the motor vehicle is revoked, what happens? And as you will know, once the fitness, well, you may not know, but let me tell you this, that once the fitness of the motor vehicle is revoked, then the vehicle cannot or should not drive on the road. You cannot drive a motor vehicle without fitness, or you should not on the road. So we were so strong on that, some people would say draconian, that is a matter of opinion, that we then insisted that once the fitness has been revoked, the only way the vehicle can remove from the station is by having it towed. The vehicle does not have a fitness, and therefore the vehicle should not. So let me clear that up. The licensed and certifying officer, or no policeman, regardless of his rank, regardless of his status, can demand or compel a person to remove the tint from the vehicle. So let's understand it. On another program, I will address this issue about tin permit. That is also a very vexing question, where people say, well, they have permit from the minister or they have permit from someone to have tint on the vehicle. I don't think, check the login, there's no such authority. There is no such authority. And as I've said in the next program, I'll go into that fully, because I was the traffic chief. I think my deputy then was Cedric Boston. And we are the ones who piloted this program. And to say that since then to now, there's not been any significant or any change at all. I recall in 2019, the then Minister of Public Security, as he was called, Mr. Kenraj Ramdatan, there was a release in the paper. There was an item where something was done and it was taken to Parliament with a view to having Parliament agree to some amendment to the regulation. I don't think that went anywhere. So let me just clarify that for the viewers based on what was discussed on the news last evening. Now, the next thing I said I'll speak briefly on the manslaughter charge against the policeman for the killing of Boston. I'm not going into the merit of the charge. If you check today's Stabrook News, my colleague, Mr. Clinton Conway, has a beautiful letter there asking some questions. Among the questions asked is why only this one man was charged. He asked a question which has not been answered so far: who authorized the SWAT unit that is based in Georgetown to go to the Essequibo Coast? If you recall, in September when this incident occurred, the person who's carrying out the functions of the commissioner, Mr. Nigel Appy, said he did not give permission for the SWAT team to go to the Essequibo Coast. So the question is still to be answered. And Mr. Conway has asked those questions. If you read today's letter column, you will see the letter there. But what struck me as very strange, and again, remember we talked about incompetence in the senior management. We talked about the crisis in the senior management. When you look at this policeman going to court, I was shocked. Maybe I should not have been. Things should not shock me, but yet still I was shocked to see that a policeman who is going to court to answer a charge of manslaughter, a very publicized, widely publicized case, the man is half-dressed, meaning that he has on his police pants and shoe and a t-shirt. Now, what type of thing is that? What is going on? The police, the high command of the police could not see how that will further erode confidence and the image of the police force. You're having a man going to court to answer a charge of manslaughter, and he's half-dressed, police pants and shoe or boots and a t-shirt with some slogan in front. No wonder people continue to lambaste the force and to have hold it in such low esteem. But these are things, when we talk about competence and you talk about the image of the force, these are things that people, the senior people should be looking at, because it impacts on the image of the force. And anything that impacts negatively on the image of the force should be addressed by those senior persons, some of them who we refer to as masqueraders, right? So I encourage you to read the letter in today's Stabrook News written by my colleague, Mr. Clinton Conway. When we say colleague, you like to remind me that we're not only colleagues, but we are co-accused. So let me say, read the letter written by my co-accused, Mr. Clinton Conway, and see the questions that he has asked in relation to the Orange Boston's killing. Now back to today's subject. You remember I said to talk about the crisis in the senior management of the Guyana Police Force, and I said the powers that be may want to argue that there's no crisis in the senior management of the Guyana Police Force, but any casual observer will see different and agree with me that there is indeed a crisis. After the recent junior promotions, which we dealt with last week, persons are continue to ask, and about senior promotions in the Guyana Police Force. And when we talk about senior promotions, we talk about promotions from inspector, in this case, right up to commissioner, because there are vacancies in all those levels, and people continue to question what is going to happen. But then let me remind you that according to the Constitution, promotions from inspector to assistant commissioner are made by the Police Service Commission. We would have noted that not so long ago, efforts were made, names were submitted, 4 names were submitted by the Police Association. I did question what process they would have gone through to identify those persons. And I did say that I am certain that no proper process, no transparent process would have been gone through. In other words, the Police Association would not have met and discussed those names, perhaps interview those persons to satisfy themselves that those persons are suitable for such an important role. But the names were given and the names were submitted. Let's see, because according to the Constitution, and I like to say according to the Constitution, because we have seen that in recent times, people have done things and totally disregard the provisions of the Constitution. But according to the Constitution, those names should be submitted to the president, and the president will identify one of the 4 to be the chairman. But before the person can be properly appointed and sworn in, the Constitution requires that the president consult with the leader of the opposition in respect of the appointment of the chairman. So let's await to see what will happen there. So there are those vacancies. And again, I say vacancy for, well, in respect of the commissioner and deputy commissioner, the process is slightly different because that is the prerogative of the president, deputy commissioners, and the commissioner. Again, this is what the Constitution says. This is not Paul Slow saying that there is to be, there should first be a police service commission. The police service commission should discuss those appointments, the deputy commissioner and commissioner. And then the president is required to consult with the chairman of the police service commission, who should first consult with the other members. When that consultation is finished, then the president is required to consult with the leader of the opposition with respect to appointments of deputy commissioners and the commissioner of police. So that is to clarify that issue for those people who are inquiring about senior promotion. Now, as I said, those are the vacancies. And in case you don't know, let me tell you, the vacancy now for 1 commissioner, because as we know, Mr. Nigel Appy has been carrying out the functions of commissioner since July of 2020. He has been carrying out. He's not been acting, he has been carrying out the functions. There's a big difference in carrying out the functions and acting as the commissioner of police. Now, let me explain to some of you. In the police force, I suspect in the army, and when you're acting and you get your proper appointment instrument to act, you are then permitted to wear the appropriate rank, the badges of rank. So you would have seen that Mr. Appy has been wearing the badge of rank or the badges associated with a deputy commissioner, and that is correct. And that confirms the point that he has not been made to act as commissioner, because if you're made to act as commissioner, you're given your instrument and then you're then entitled to wear whatever badge of rank the commissioner wears. Same thing with the deputy commissioners. They're not acting, right? They're carrying out the functions. And again, you will see in the case of Ikin, he wears the assistant commissioner rank. So even though the Minister of Home Affairs and others, he himself, they're referring to him as deputy commissioner, the fact that he's not wearing the badge of rank of this deputy commissioner tells you that they know that he is not acting. He's just carrying out the function. The same thing with Brutus and others. So let's get this straight, because at the moment there's a vacancy for a commissioner of police, and then there are vacancies for 3 deputy commissioners, because the establishment of the force calls for 1 commissioner and 4 deputy commissioners. So I hope that I clarify that part of it. Let me say this. It is clear to me that the government wants certain persons to fill those vacancies. And that is the only reason, right, why the commission that I chaired was suspended with less than 2 months of its life remaining. And let me remind you again that the letters of suspension were sent to members of the commission on the 16th of June, 2021. And the life of the commission ended on the 9th rather, of August 2021. I asked the question then, and I will continue to ask the question. Why would the president seek to suspend the Police Service Commission when the Service Commission life had less than 2 months remaining? And I will answer that for you. That was done, and if you look at the dates, suspension on the 16th of June, the Chief Justice was due to rule on the Brutus matter on the 18th of June. That was postponed to the 28th. So when the suspension came on the 16th of June, it was because they wanted to ensure that when the decision of the Chief Justice, which they knew would have gone against Brutus, was handed down, then there would be no Police Service Commission to effect those promotions, which has been delayed since December 31st, 2020. That was clear. And I'm aware because people, you see, in all of this, they still have a lot of right-thinking people. People have been reaching out to me. I am aware of the meetings that were held to discuss this issue, right? I am aware, involving senior politicians, involving senior retired police officers, or at least one senior retired police officer. When they decided that, look, how this case is going, the Chief Justice is going to rule against Brutus. And if we really want to make sure that the commission does not promote the persons who are identified to be promoted, then what we have to do, we have to move to have the Police Service Commission disbanded through suspension. And that is why that was done. So I'm saying this to you for you to understand what transpired. The government wants certain people to be in those senior positions. And then you're going to ask the question why that is so. And I will tell you a little later why they want those persons who are, many persons who are so incompetent to fill those important positions. It's more control. They want more control. More, as you're aware, when we deal with the suspension, as you're aware, through the lawyers, the suspension was challenged. Our lawyers claim, quite correctly in my view, that the president violated the Constitution in suspending the commission. And again, don't listen to me. Don't listen to me. Read Article 225 of the Constitution of the Cooperative Republic of Guyana. I will see the procedure for the suspension is set out there. And that procedure, we contend, was not followed. The matter came up before Justice Gino Prasad, you may recall, and then the Attorney General moved to have the matter struck out. His argument is that the life of the commission ended on the 9th of August, and therefore there is no Police Service Commission to continue to pursue this matter. Arguments were made, and Attorney General, the lawyers representing the Police Service Commission, arguments were made, and at the last hearing, the judge, Justice Gino Prasad, adjourned to a date in January of 2022. So we suspect or we expect that anytime during the next 2 weeks, because the judge said that he will call the parties and be able to make a decision as to whether the order sought by the Attorney General, that is to have the substantive matter struck out, whether he will strike out the matter or whether he will proceed to hear the substantive matter. But I want to make this point. If you reflect and you recall in June, on June 29th, on that program Issues in the News, when the Attorney General addressed the suspension and claimed, it's there again for you to see. I'm very careful when I say these things because people want to say that you are misrepresenting the facts. And you know now, if you misrepresent facts or if you call people names, then they become emotionally disturbed, and then you find yourself before the court on some charge related to the cyber act or some other thing. So I'm saying that on the 29th of June, or the program is in the news, the Attorney General made the point that when the president makes an order, such as he did when he said that the Police Service Commission is suspended with immediate effect on the 16th of June. He said the only person that he said Paul Slow, can decide that the president was wrong. He said even if the president is wrong, you have to carry out the order until some competent court says that the president was wrong. So I know differently because I know that no one can be compelled to carry out an unlawful order. And the commission's contention was the order to suspend was unlawful, and therefore we continued with our work. But this is the sweet part. The Attorney General said, take it to court and let the court decide whether the order was unconstitutional or not. So we obliged, and we took it to court. And lo and behold, not unexpected, the Attorney General is now saying that the matter must not go to court, must not be ventilated in court because there is no commission. These things are I mean, people say Guyana is not a real place, but when you look at these things, you tend to agree that this cannot be a real place. The Attorney General argues that the place to ventilate this matter, you should comply with what we term the unconstitutional order of the president and take it to court. So we did not comply because we said if it's unlawful, we cannot be compelled to comply with an unlawful order. I remind you some time ago about the Nuremberg trials, which clearly says that no one can be compelled to carry out an unlawful order. And if you were to carry out an unlawful order, you can then use the fact that a superior giving you those orders to justify carrying out an unlawful order. So then he says now, well, the court must be the ones to rule. And then when you take it to court, he said, well, no, the court should not now look into the matter. So that is where it is. We are now waiting the judge to summon us to hear what the ruling is in respect of that suspension and matter. Now, since I want to say this, remember I talked about earlier the vacancies and that. Since August the 2nd, it is clear that the government has targeted some senior officers. Deputy Commissioner Williams, first he was sent on leave. He had long leave, 200 and odd days leave. He was sent on leave. Then when he resumed, he is now sent to the COVID unit to function in the COVID unit. And someone said that, and there are others as well, but you know, someone reminded me that what they should have done is what I did in 2003. Because in 2003, when the Minister of Affairs, Mr. Ronald Gadraj, I was a commanding Bobbies, sought to order me to return a firearm to a businessman. The firearm was the subject of an ongoing investigation. And I declined. I told him, no, the investigation had not reached the stage for the firearm to be returned. And then he said he's ordering me to return the firearm. And I reminded him that I am not compelled, I could not be compelled to carry out any unlawful order. He complained to the president, Mr. Bar Jagdeo, and Mr. Jagdeo summoned me for a meeting. I went there, I met with him, and he tried to convince me that I should apologize to the minister for not carrying out this unlawful order, and I refused to do so. Or I should say, based on what my lawyer told me, he said, don't use the word refuse, it's something too strong. That's semantics. I declined to do so. I declined to apologize. And then an attempt was made to remove me from the Guyana Police Force. I received a letter from the head of the Presidential Secretariat through the Commissioner then, McDonald, and the man who is in charge of admin Green, deceased Henry Green. And I went to court and challenged the order. I went to court and I challenged the order and was successful in the challenge. And therefore, there are some people who suggest that Williams and others should have done the same thing. But that is up to them. That is up to them. I am me, and I'm not going to allow anybody to violate my rights. I have not been known over the years that I was a police officer to violate people's rights. and I'm not going to allow anyone. So I went to court and I challenged it. So yeah, Deputy Commissioner Paul Williams moved out of the force. And remind you again that Deputy Commissioner Paul Williams is the second senior man in the Ghana Police Force. Oppie is a Deputy Commissioner. He's senior to Williams by date of appointment. Let's get this clear. They are both Deputy Commissioners, but Oppie's date of appointment is before Paul Williams. So that gives him seniority over Williams. And the Williams matter started with Ikin and Karimbash. They were at the police, Felix Austin Police College, and they made allegations against Williams in respect to people, in respect to the payment of lectures. They claimed that monies were paid to people to conduct lecture, and no lecture was conducted. So they say he was involved in a corrupt process. That matter, I was told, was thoroughly investigated. The persons who did the lecture or did the lectures, they were outsiders, were able to relate to the investigators and provide evidence to the investigators that lectures were done on specific topics on specific dates. The ranks who attended those lectures were interviewed, and they corroborated the story that lectures were indeed done. Yet still, they decided to embark on a campaign to smear Williams and to say all kind of things. And as I indicated before, this was communicated to the president, Mr. Fanali, because when we met on the 16th of September 2021, he raised the issue of Williams being a matter pending. And I told him that if that is the case, then the matter must be properly investigated, as all the other matters should be, and make a final determination. So even though that matter was investigated, and as far as I'm aware, Williams was cleared, the witch hunt continues. So Williams, the second senior man in the force, obviously not favored by the administration, moved aside. And compare his qualifications to some of the pretenders. Compare his qualification to people like Ikin, people like Brutus, people like Karimbash. Way above, way above. He's far more qualified than those persons are, but he clearly does not find favor with the administration, so they have moved him aside. So that is Williams. And then they have also removed, if you recall, Assistant Commissioner Andrews Jr. At the time when the government came into office, he was the man in charge of the Public Relations Department. That department is now civilianized, meaning that the persons who head that department, they now style it the Police Corporate Communication Unit. The person who heads that department is a civilian, and the person who is the Public Relations Officer, I think, they call him, he too is a civilian. And when you look at some of the releases that are made by the Police Corporate Communication Unit, it is clear to see that these people do not have a clue about certain issues that they raise. And I call them the corporate propaganda unit, because every release, or most of the release that emanates from that office, have a slant towards propagandizing the issue. Last week I spoke about the release they made in respect to Karimbash, how they interviewed people at the Soku, and they were high in praise for the style of management. And if they knew that the place was so nice, they would have asked to go there long before. And all that is propaganda. That is clear, straight propaganda, because I am aware people are very dissatisfied with what is going on. And as a result of that dissatisfaction, you will recall that a memo was written by Karimbash to all his staff, telling them what are the working hours. You tell me, if people are confident, satisfied with their work environment, you want to tell me that the head of the unit will have cause to write them, to tell them that they have to work until certain hours? No way. No way. When people are motivated and comfortable in their work environment, I know that sometimes I had some of my officers, when I was there, they say, hey, bye, take a break, go home. You've been at it too long. Go home, some of the staff. I said, go take a break. Right? Come back tomorrow and start again. Because that is a commitment that they would have if they are comfortable. But the mere fact that the corporate unit had to go and issue this statement to say people were comfortable and all of that is rubbish. rubbish. That tells you that people are not comfortable. So you had Andrews Jr., who was the man in charge there, and he was removed. I think he now at CDC, that is the disaster management unit. He is there. Not a highly qualified person, not highly qualified. And to get at him too, he is jointly charged with the former members of the Standing Order Review Team and other serving members of the force with conspiracy to commit fraud. Conspiracy, that is the type of witch hunt that you have. That is the type of weaponization that took place. Andrews Jr. is highly qualified. But his move, no allegation, I'm not aware, apart from the trumped up conspiracy to commit fraud charge, no allegation was made in respect of him. They just moved him. And I said this to you, that all of those persons who were moved at the behest and on the recommendation of Clifton Aiken. So people who he felt were comfortable and qualified, he was uncomfortable with them being in a certain position, so he approached the powers that be to have them removed. And I say again, all the senior transfers or postings, in the police, again, the correct term, inspectors and officers are not transferred. Inspectors and officers are posted. All of the senior posted that took place in August were done at the behest of Assistant Commissioner Clifton Aiken, who boasted, even before the election, that he had a close relationship with the opposition leader who promised to make him the commissioner. And he had written out a list of all those persons who were to be moved into all kind of positions because he was not perhaps comfortable that they were more qualified than he was, and therefore presented a challenge to him. Then you had Philip Azor. Another man moved, Senior Superintendent Philip Azor, moved from his position, I think he was at A Division at the time, and moved, I think he's at CDC as well. And again, Azor is one of the names the president mentioned. He was very upset that Azor, during the fiasco at the elections commission's office in Arfield Street, Azor was there, and they weren't satisfied with the actions Azor took. And again, if you recall, at that time, the man who in charge was Assistant Commissioner Edgar Thomas, who was instructed to take certain actions to resolve the issue at the Election Commission's office in Arfield Street, and he failed to do so. And he was relieved of his command. And Azor was put in charge. And the president indicated that Azor was, well, not indicated, he told me clearly that he was dissatisfied with Azor because Azor, you overheard transmissions on the police network, and Azor was very disrespectful. So Azor was moved. Next man, highly qualified, competent person. And then they also removed Stanton. He too was in A Division during the election period, and he too, apparently they were dissatisfied. But he's another qualified man. If I recall correctly, when Stanton graduated from the university with his degree in public management, he graduated with a distinction. And if I'm not wrong, he might even cop the Prime Minister's medal for the best graduating student in that program. So these are qualified people, but they are a threat to these people who are favored. So they move them off the seat. It's for them to decide whether they're going to accept that. They have accepted it so far, or what they are going to do. And then in terms of the thing, then if you look around, look at the reshuffling that is taking place. It's a pack of cards. So if you look at the commanders, Region 1, Region 2, Region 4, Region 6, those people have all, since August, have been moved. I saw recently where the man who was at, I think, Region 1 has now gone to take over Region 6. But it is clear, no proper planning. So you're shuffling a pack of cards. But let me tell you this, if the deck is fixed and the deck has many, many jokers, as it seems as though this deck has, chances are when you shuffle and you reveal, you're going to reveal a next joker. The probability is very high that no matter what you shovel, jokers are going to be revealed because the pack is stacked with that suit. And then if you look, and I say the crisis, there are several contributory factors to the crisis, in my view. And one of them is the lack of a succession plan. There is no proper succession planning in the police force for the longest while, not now. No proper succession planning. So what happens? They wait until a man goes off and then they realize, oh, this man is going off and leave. We need to find someone. No training takes place. So just pick someone, in most cases, somebody who's favored by the administration instructions, put this man in this position. That is why you have a situation where a man like Karimbash can find himself in charge of Soku. I'll deal with him or I'll deal with that Soku issue a little longer. Now, so no streaming, no proper succession planning, no streaming. Back in the day, we had proper streaming. So what we mean by that? If a man, let's say, is at the CID, you seek to identify who is the competent man in the second position, third position, and so on. So they stream in that area. And it goes to all the other areas, the BAN, the TSU, the divisions. So you identify people and you train them and you put them in a particular stream. That has not been happening. No streaming. And then you have no proper training of persons for suitable senior management position. In the past, officers were identified and sent to reputable institutions. So you had the Police Staff College in Bramshill in the United Kingdom. And this is not only Guyana, in the Commonwealth, Caribbean, and other places. Policemen with potential were identified and sent for training at that institution. The last training at Bramshill in the United Kingdom took place in October of 1994. Since 1994, no one has gone. And let me say this to you. And people who know policing and who know will tell you, there was, at that time, there was no other institution in the world that compared to, or favorably compared to Bramshill for preparing policemen for senior command positions. 1994, October, the last person to have gone there. And I know this because the last person to have gone there was Superintendent Paul Slew, yours truly. In October 1994 to now, no one else. Then we had people used to be identified and sent to the FBI Academy, again for training. I don't know when last persons were sent to the FBI Academy. People were also identified and sent to the Canadian Mounted Police in Canada for senior and specified policing training. People were also sent to the Jamaica Command Center. They had a beautiful program there for junior commanders and senior commanders. Those persons were sent there. Nothing. So the president recently made an announcement that the government will pay for commanders to go to UG and do the degree and first degree and advanced degrees, which is good. But let me say this. University of Guyana does not teach specific policing subjects. So even when you send people to do that institution, you need to follow up by making sure people go to institution where policing subjects are for senior officers are taught. And then I noted there too that at the same time, you have a situation where people have stopped going to those reputable institutions abroad. But then even locally, the training that was done locally is not being done any longer. And I noted during my research that you had courses, for example, like the junior officers course and the senior officers course. Those courses are no longer held. And I noted in my research that the stopping of those programs stopped during the period when Assistant Commissioner Ikin was in charge of training, and he had as his deputy Senior Superintendent Karimbash. So the training, the junior officer program and the senior officer program stopped during that period. And the junior officer program was so recognized in the Caribbean years ago. When I attended the junior officer program, course 5, I think it was around 1981, sometime then. We had overseas students. People used to come from overseas. I had a squaddy there who was from St. Lucia, Mr. Collins. People came from overseas because the program was highly sought after. But now, no program at all, right? No program. So we can understand why the force is in crisis. Now, let me tell you something about that same period when Akin and Karimbash were there. When the commission that I chaired took office, we insisted that in order for persons to be promoted to the rank of inspector and to assistant superintendent, they had to pass the appropriate qualifying examination as stipulated in Standing Order 22. We discovered that persons were not taking the exam and people were being promoted willy-nilly. So I was tasked by the commission to meet with the administration of the force and to explain to them what is the commission's position on that. I did so. So in 2018, listen to this carefully. So again, if dots line up, in 2018, when recommendations were made, several persons who had not passed the examination were recommended. And we said at the commission, no, those persons are not going to be promoted. And this was communicated to the administration that the reason these persons are not promoted, or one of the reasons, was they did not pass the appropriate qualifying examination. The next year, 2019, when the recommendations were made, we observed that persons who did not pass the gazetted exam in 2018, did not even attempt the gazetted exam, were recommended saying that they passed. That caught us, that raised some suspicion, because those of us who went through the system know that it is almost impossible for a rank who is not exposed to daily policing to pass the gazetted exam at one sitting. It is difficult, extremely difficult. The number of subjects that you have to take and the complexity of some of those issues. What we observe at a particular rank, one sitting, first time, pass all the things. So we queried it. You know what we discovered after? We discovered that marking of those papers, the marking of those people, was selectively done. And how did we discover that? They sent to say that some people were not recommended for promotion because they did not pass the appropriate qualifying examination. That is what is referred to. So I personally spoke to two of the ranks. Why you did not take the exam? You know that the commission's position is that you have to take the examination. In the case of one rank, that person indicated that they took the exam years ago and passed. So he said, well, look, let me see the pass slip that you have. And within a few days, the pass slip was sent showing that the person passed the examination some time ago. So it was clear that either they deliberately did not check the records properly, or the records are so chaotic that that was not the case. But the other one was even more worrying, because that person, the second person, told me that they took the examination and that they were awaiting results. And you know what we discovered at the commission? Is that they selectively marked the examination papers in that year. In other words, those persons that were favored were marked, and those that were not favored were not marked. So instead of marking all the papers and indicating who passed and who did not pass, they selectively marked. And as it was subsequently revealed, one of the rank who they did not mark and marked subsequent to the promotion and all of that had actually passed. And I am sure that given the discussion and given what took place, that if Akin and Karimbash had done the professional thing and marked all the papers and sent you the result, those persons would have been promoted. So all that is part of the corruption of the process. The promotion examinations, allegations are being made that many people are set to have passed the examination when they never took the examination, or they just turn up and as part of this corruption process in terms of the marking and in terms of whatever else goes on, they claim that the people pass when in fact the people have not passed. And the reason why they claim the people pass, because the people are the ones that are favored. So that is part of the corruption and process. And when you look at the training now, the training environment, who do you think is in charge of it now? Senior Superintendent Chief Pasaz Bakas, one of the officers who joined with Butas to challenge the promotion of in 2020. He is one of those persons. And I say to you, this is a man who has no knowledge in policing. This is a man who has little or no knowledge in training. And he is the person who is now in charge of all training in the police force. And then you ask, why is it that you are in this mess? Why is it that there's a crisis in the senior management of the police force? And I say to you that those are some of the reasons why you have the crisis. And I close by, let me say this to you. One of the problems in the senior management of the force at the various levels, whether it's at the divisional level, whether the admin level of headquarters, is the fact that you have too many persons, too many police officers who are not police. Too many police officers, senior police officers, who are not police. And let me say this to you. You might want to know what I'm saying. And we would say, we policemen would tell you that not everyone who wears the uniform is a police. When I was at the TSU as a young sergeant, we made a clear distinction between sergeants and persons who wore 3 stripes. So when you were a sergeant, it's not only wearing 3 stripes, but it was knowing the job and doing the job and commanding respect. The same thing applies to senior officers. Being there and wearing the uniform with all the gadgets and all of that of a senior officer does not make you a policeman. A policeman, and this is where your colleagues and your subordinates will decide whether you're a police or not by virtue of your knowledge, by virtue of your action. They know that you're steeped in the laws, you know the law, you know the regulations, and that is what makes you a policeman. You know about prosecution, you know about statement, you know about all of those things. But the problem is you have many, many, many senior people now, even those in command position, and long now, it's worse now, who, and again, they can check this out if they want. They can challenge this. Almost every single matter that is reported in terms of a crime reported, all of those things are sent to the DPP for legal advice. Can be the most trivial of crime, a wounding, let's say, or DPP for legal advice. And why? Because the people who you have as commanders are not police. So they can't go through a file and see that the statements in that file establish a particular offense and then right to say that the person should be charged for this offense. So everything goes to the DPP because they are not police as such. They are not police. The 1 hour today is almost up. I had many, many, many more things to talk about, but I don't want to go on and on this morning. I want to end this morning's program as I usually do by pleading with you to tell you that COVID is real. COVID is real. Take all the necessary precautions. Take all the necessary steps. In Guyana right now, there's over 1,100 deaths of COVID, a staggering number of infected persons, a staggering number of daily infections with COVID. You have got to take precaution. It starts with you. So I urge you all, again, as I've been doing, to follow the COVID guidelines, follow the COVID protocol. And I am sure that given what we have had and the interest shown in this morning program by the number of viewership and the comments, I am going to continue because I have not completed what I had to, all that I was listed to say this morning. We'll continue next week, Wednesday, God's willing. So stay safe, and I look forward to seeing you next week, Wednesday, when we have another episode of Speaking Out, Exposing Corruption and Incompetence. Thank you for your time. God bless you all.